So I found the little description for the agent, and I put that on the chat window there. You probably don't need to see it. I'm the one who needs to see it because I wanted to use that as an introduction for the next round.
Fine.
So,
yeah, I'm revenue neutral here, so
yeah.
I don't know anything about this person or the history or whatever. So yeah, and again, I don't know why I didn't think of this, but I did not check in advance to be sure these people are all in the light.
Oh, right. Or so even how do we identify this person?
Well, as part of my protocol. See, what's going on behind the scenes is I'm getting set and working to connect. That's the first thing that I do, is ask to see if they're in the light or not. And if they're not, this will necessitate us stopping that communication for them at this point.
Okay.
I will have to do a separate session to do a spirit rescue for them.
Okay.
Because I'm certainly not going to leave them in limbo. So I'll need to reach out and do that. But what that would only mean, practically for this exercise is we'll have to come back later at another date and then talk to them in their new home.
Right. And the other question I ask, given that we don't have a name for this fellow, how is he identified?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's everything in this work is driven by intention.
Okay. All right.
So the divine realm, knowing what you know, will be able to kind of look and see where that came from and then trace it back to who that individual is and what that soul is. And then they'll be able to connect me to that individual.
Okay.
So believe it or not, I have actually worked on a few clients where the person who hired me was too paranoid to tell me their name.
Oh, okay.
But through their intention and my connecting to Creator, we got the job done.
Okay, I understand.
So there's total confidentiality, and it sounds weird. People can't believe I can do this to begin with, and people say, "Well, my name is Michael Smith. How can you possibly pluck me out of that sea of Michael Smiths?" Well, Creator. So I'm connected by the divine realm to that consciousness. So whatever Dwight is calling himself these days, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's the intention.
Okay. Understood. Right? Very good.
The key is whether they're really available for an interview in a form or in a state of mind where it would be useful for the exercise.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Shall we start again?
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to go ahead and connect to this Secret Service agent? Yeah,
and I'll just should I read the intro now, or would you like to go for, or should I read about?
Why don't you read the intro and then I'll start in, because it'll be hard for me to do my thing while you're talking, because I'll be drawn to your words and I'll be focusing on that.
Okay.
So as soon as you finish that, then I will launch in. It won't take very long.
Okay.
But I'll set up the communication.
Okay. All right.
And then he will announce his presence.
Okay.
Like before. He'll say, I'm here or whatever.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So this fellow was a Secret Service agent, and he worked for Eisenhower. We don't have a name for this fellow. He apparently was dead before 1957. He had been through World War II. He was proud, patriotic, idealistic. He had lived through the McCarthy era. He wasn't trusting any of that. He really believed in Eisenhower and thought he could do what America needed. He was very proud to serve him, although not close to him. He was working his way up. He accidentally learned some dark things that were happening behind Eisenhower's back regarding information kept from him about aliens, the cabal, secret societies. He was appalled and excited, knew it was important, and that Eisenhower would want to know. He wanted disclosure and tried to tell people so he could get the message to the president. He really wanted to get to Eisenhower, but was unsuccessful. No one seemed interested or believed him. He was let go of his position and not told why, and a few weeks later he was killed, and no one ever discovered the truth. So that's the fellow that we're doing the inquiry on now.
Okay. Hello, this is Phillip speaking.
Hi, Phillip. Thanks for joining us.
You are welcome.
So, Phillip, this was my first question. If you were willing to tell Karl your name and any connections you have to persons known by Karl or Danny.
I would rather remain anonymous at this point because there are people that I am still connected to in Earthplane who were connected to me professionally, and I do not wish to entangle them in any karmic drama that might result from disclosing my identity and causing a further survey of my contacts. So this is provisional. This could be revealed at a later time, but for the moment I would prefer to remain unknown, as has happened and is such the case now up to the present.
Okay. Is there anyone still living that would benefit knowing your story, and would you be willing to have them know your story while maintaining your anonymity?
Yes, very much so. I am quite eager to speak with you and quite willing to tell you all that I know that can be of service to you in your effort now. I see your history, I see your intentions, and I see the future capabilities of this endeavor. And it is a wonderful thing indeed, because it touches so many lives in its reach, and it supports the many others who have been on this path down through the recent times in wanting the truth to come forth and not appreciating even themselves the vast reach and depth of the problem that they are trying to surmount. So any and all we can do in this connection, we are most eager to assist with. So there is much I can tell you because I have the benefit of much greater knowledge than I had while in the physical. And the story is very accurate that I did become aware of sinister forces at work. And this was very much being taken into a greater position of having secret knowledge imparted to me, in the assumption I was totally on board and being in control of the darker beings who wished to control government and the military, and in particular the intelligence agencies. So first thing I would say to people in the wake-up call that my message will represent is that the major requirement for recruitment in doing intelligence work is the ability to be controlled at all levels of the mind by those in charge of the alien agenda. So anyone with an intelligence history, unfortunately, you can assume to be in the enemy camp, not by choice, not by the force of their will or by the destiny of their soul. This is a total corruption and a co-opting of their very being. in service to a dark agenda not of their making, and for which they see at most only the dim outlines, but are programmed to misinterpret even that as something necessary to the cause at hand as they view the world. So while we understand this is quite unpleasant to hear on the part of many involved with the military and the government, this is very much the case, and it brings to the forefront immediately the great reach of the darkness in corrupting anyone and everyone of use to them, and the rest of humanity as well, to be subjugated and complacent. So anyone involved with the intelligence programs, whether as part of the independent Central Intelligence agencies, the National Security Agency, and on with all of the intelligence branches within the military organizations, all very much are manned and controlled by individuals very much subjugated themselves and controlled completely by the dark alien agenda. This is at the highest levels and within all levels of critical oversight and control as managers or department heads or field agents commanding underlings. At the very lowest levels may be functionaries who have a minimal role, and they are much like ordinary citizens simply working for organizations with a dark agenda, as opposed to working for a corporation as a worker and perhaps serving a somewhat dark agenda in service to that organization over their competition and so on. But this is the nature of the physical realm. It is the nature of things to have competition and a struggle for life versus death on many levels. And this appeals to the darker leanings and emotions to survive, to prevail, and sometimes to serve the ego through suppression of others and control of others. So those very human impulses are commandeered and repurposed within the subconscious mind of the human to serve the cause of the aliens under the guise of serving the government to which they are intensely loyal, or their military command structure of which they may be a member. So I was part of this very dark cabal, and it was in a state of innocence of the true origin and purpose, up to the point when I began to see there might be something outside of a sinister nature that was corrupting things. And that was the great awakening that I had. I know now from my current awareness and vantage point that this was a spiritual awakening that was happening for me. This outreach is attempted again and again by the light, as it is made possible through the requests coming from fellow humans wanting things to be better and wanting a change for the better for humanity and for the nation they love and for loved ones and friends. This outreach to the light gives us the currency to make such an outreach, even for those individuals unseen and to whom the public is completely in the dark. But we can use the intention of those who seek truth and love to reign, to make some attempts to reach those who are corrupted, as it is in service to the human yearning and the human request. This is still quite limited in scope because the overall requirement is to match the rules of the arrangement to allow human to be free agents and to have free will. And of course, they are being subjugated in these very capabilities by the alien interlopers. But those two, as beings, have free agency and free will. So this is a tug of war, in a sense, and a contest to see who will prevail and survive. We do favor love as the eventual wish of Creator for all to enjoy and live and express as a priority and way of living and being. But we cannot take side in the human plane. So I was awakened by the divine realm, and as a consequence began to have a crisis of conscience about my situation, for I knew that there were two possible interpretations of everything I knew was happening. The one being an important need of the government to maintain secrecy and even to subvert other government functions, as well as to cause harm to other nations and even to the American population in service to the supremacy of the United States and the military posture. This was very much a propaganda effort and a way of misdirecting the intention to serve the nation, to use that impulse to do exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time, and as a result serve the dark purpose of the aliens to stir up trouble, cause difficulty, confusion, and ever increasing fear. And this is why I was able to see through the undergoing efforts of my organization. The Secret Service is now so heavily corrupted by alien influence, it cannot be relied on to protect anyone. It is solely at the discretion of the handlers as to whether they will do their job or look the other way and allow harm to befall their charge. This is the greatest disappointment for me as being idealistic and very much wish to serve, even in giving my life, but never dreamed I was turning over my willingness to die to an alien invasion that wanted us all dead. This, in fact, is the case, and this is the way things have been for thousands and thousands of years now. So the entire community looking towards a moment of great disclosure must receive the sobering perspective that this is not a new development. This is not a secret that has been kept for a few decades and is ready to burst upon the scene in a big way at any moment if the right person were to come forward and share their knowledge. and make all the difference and receive the massive media attention and accolades and be treated as a hero by all who see their achievement. The reality has been that through the ages there have been many whistleblowers at many levels with many varying levels of understanding and awareness of this intrusive force at work. All have been sidelined, subjugated to the point they no longer have such impulses, or killed to take them out of action. This will continue for a time yet. So we do caution those stepping forward to align spiritually with the divine realm as they do their work. This will confer some greater safety and protection for them. If they do not have such beliefs, that is okay. They are still light workers and they still are connected spiritually, but simply not aware in what degree and with what rich history this is so. They will still be supported, but to a somewhat lesser degree than those who embrace the light and who embrace the divine realm and wish to partner with them in their day-to-day affairs. If I were to have done that back in my time, this might have saved my life, as I could have been given impulse guidance to sidestep the conspiracy that grew around me and ultimately caused my death. So this is just a tip for those who follow in my footsteps. And of course, the level of risk to me was tremendously greater in being a part of that infrastructure. And so any act of disloyalty or violation of their wishes could be expected to receive the swiftest and harshest retribution. So I knew that the forces around the president were gathering, and there was a gathering storm, and in fact a conspiracy to remove him from office. And this is extremely disturbing to me, and it clashed heavily with the loyalty I still felt in my role as Secret Service agent. But I could see that others did not share my loyalty, and this was quite puzzling. And now I understand it was simply because they were so heavily corrupted and subjugated. They could hold the notion of turning against the very person they had been serving and swore to protect with their very lives. This illustrates the possibilities of subjugation and control, which can be quite total and is affecting all to varying levels and degrees. But this is what caused my demise, and it was the awareness of the plan to assassinate him that caused me to move away from the activities I was taking part in. And that in turn is what caused suspicion of me and ultimately marked me for elimination. And so I was killed to silence me, and as punishment and as a simple housekeeping function, which is truly what it was to them. They were simply eliminating someone who had a defect in their estimation, in not being manageable, much in the way you might return a puppy to the kennel who is too aggressive and bites one of the children. This is the level of disregard the aliens hold towards us. We are their stooges, their minions, their guinea pigs, their playthings, their entertainment, and many times their slaves. And this is the dilemma all face now. If they take no steps to help reverse this, they may experience each one of those roles in turn, if not in their current life, in subsequent lives. This is the great quest of the light, to overturn this state of affairs. The shift in consciousness is very much unfolding and ramping up. The growing awareness within the whistleblower community working towards disclosure are contributing immeasurably to this. It is an extremely important effort, and its contributions will be many. The reality we are sharing, even though it is somewhat unpleasant, is this is a more difficult task than many such workers imagine. Not simply bringing forth the most complete and compelling bit of evidence or collection of evidence. They are working against the fact that most human beings at this point are deaf and blind to any revelation of fact. And this is deliberate, and it is intentional, and can precisely create a set of blinders with regard to any topic, so people will not be able to use their own common sense or past knowledge to reason their way to a correct interpretation and a logical response. They will be completely refractory to hearing and acting on that revelation. This is as dire a situation as one can imagine, short of not having anyone left to hear the story, to help persuade and recruit to the cause. The healing work being done by many is working to change this. And the more who hear the message and heed the call that the healing with the intention of reversing the subjugation by the overseers and the controllers and the manipulators is an integral part of the shift in consciousness. And the more this is purposefully targeted and requested with specificity to the divine realm, the more this can be done. The reach of you and all who know you and whom you may be able to influence is potentially far greater than my influence would have been if I were to have been a whistleblower in my day and seek out a member of the press, for example, to share what I knew. I would never have been believed. I would have been doubted and would have been taken to be a mentally deranged person. This is part of the programming and is now an automatic reaction to anyone who brings forward an unusual perspective. They are thought to be loosely hinged, to be unbalanced, to be mentally ill. And this is very much ingrained now in all human beings, that any deviation from the state of complacency is immediately suspect, and people become armchair psychiatrists and are willing to label any such storyteller with the labels of diminishment, of ridicule and dismissal, whether simply calling them a member of the tinfoil hat crowd or to say they are mentally ill, serves to satisfy most people that that person can be dismissed and ignored, and that their information is faulty and a fantasy. So the secrets keep themselves because the listeners to the whistleblower cannot hear the message. So this is a dual challenge: to first find the truth, and then to help enough people to heal to an extent they can hear the message. So this is the beauty we see in the collaboration unfolding with this interview, that you have individuals from both camps, someone caring very deeply about the truth of things and very interested in the message about extraterrestrials and their doings and the revelation of the implications, and is uncluttered and unhindered and unfettered in that effort. And this is a rare thing in these times. And he owes that to some extent to the individual channeling who is helping him in this effort as well. And the reason we orchestrated the outreach between the two is because both perspectives are needed, and the ideal is for them to partner and work together. There needs to be an inner awakening as well as an outer public awakening and disclosure and appearance of knowledge within the media and within the social media and the interpersonal sharing of information and knowledge. The size of the effort is not so large. It is the size of the resistance that is large. With the communication links that exist through the internet particularly, the ability to transfer knowledge is essentially instantaneous and almost universal for those who have access to any media outlet, because all are interconnected via the internet directly or indirectly. The problem is the built-in roadblocks, checkpoints, filters that are designed to weed out any revelations, anything unusual that goes against conventional wisdom and can be dismissed as being something from a crackpot or someone who is perpetrating a hoax or simply wishing to get attention by stirring up trouble about something controversial. It is so easy to disregard such information. In the first place, very few people wish to hear such messages. They have enough of what they would call real problems to worry about. They don't need additional darkness to have in their thoughts. So they are inclined to only focus on those things of personal interest in the first place. And the inner programming is already in place within them, so that certain topics are immediately met with skepticism and disregard. This is deliberate, it is purposeful, it is intensive and detailed in the level of instructions that are imparted to each human being on a daily basis over and over and over and over. It is exactly the same as you may have seen in motion pictures about POWs in various internment camps, subjected to propaganda blaring from loudspeakers all day long about the greatness of the regime holding power over them and everything wrong with the country of their origin and so on. Humans cannot override such messages when they go into the subconscious directly, and there is no pre-existing barrier to block them. So this is not their fault. This is the fault of the human equipment. So your physical being has within it vulnerabilities. You know this directly through the limitation on lifespan, first and foremost, as well as limitations on physical capabilities, being only to run so fast, jump so high, remember so many things, do more than one thing or one and a half things at once, and so on. The part that most people are unaware of is the subconscious level, where all of the programming, the inner instruction set resides, the personal beliefs and the aspects of their makeup emotionally, psychologically, mentally, and spiritually to take their knowledge and learning and shape their behavior as the future unfolds in making choices that serve themselves and others if they are inclined. That is quite malleable and subject to manipulation by those who know how. There are some inner resistances. There are divine impulses that are imparted to help to counter those things when that is the alignment of the higher self, and in particular the extension in the physical. So any positive thought will be of benefit and allow a divine impulse to carry greater weight and have greater impact. This is the role you play with bringing the information forward that people very much need to hear. This creates the possibility within them, and including the subconscious level, to be open to a counter message, to be open to a divine impulse thought and a wave of healing energy that can begin to even reshape their mind. If people are open to having this happen, this gives the divine realm the permission to do so. This is why the problem is both daunting and readily solvable. The solution is as simple as we have described. The difficulty is getting all on board in some way or another, or enough to turn the tide. And that will do what is needed through sharing of knowledge and information and humans helping one another. So my story has played out in the same way for many, many, many others who came to their senses, who were open to an impulsed truth and began to question what was happening around them. The most graphic example currently in the news everywhere is the extremely intense emotional reactions to all things Trump related. This clearly has the germ of truth in him being a powerful figure who people are unaccustomed to seeing on display with raw energy and no filter, to be diplomatic, to have the niceties of a typical impression as a leader of the nation and so on. All is understandable that as he tramps about and has his moments of excessive enthusiasm or brashness and an ill-considered idea that can stir up some difficulty, even though he has good intention, the reaction immediately becomes excessive and outsized and often manipulated by the media to only show the darkest aspect, to shade the truth, to give partial truths in almost every case, to emphasize the negative. This is all a prime example of being under alien control. The media no longer think for themselves. They think the thoughts they are programmed to think, and they do that with great skill and with great articulate interpretations and analysis of the news of the day. But they have simply been subjected to manipulation to keep out of the consideration counterpoint arguments and other perspectives. So they argue as an enemy and not as a neutral party. And this is going on across the board, and the human response to the media influence, including the social media and its intensity in causing all of the social unrest, the many marches throughout not only the United States, but in foreign countries as well, is all stirred up and inspired by the alien agenda to sow discord and ramp up fear, as this serves them in creating confusion, turmoil, misdirected and misapplied energy, and waste of tremendous resources that otherwise could help humanity. So all are pawns in this exercise and are being used as pawns and manipulated as on a chessboard or as minions, equally as effective as if they were alien clones set down on Earth to run about and shout and break windows and complain and get one another to become more and more angry about the evil in the White House and so on. All negativity serves the aliens. It does not serve the human. This is so far off the divine path. It is obvious to the light worker, but all such individuals, being a small minority, have little voice and are not well equipped to be visible even when the swirling passions get the camera attention, and they are looking for the greatest pain, the greatest suffering, the greatest mayhem, and the greatest negative imagery that can be used against the wrongdoers and the competition who they regard as against their own political leanings. They not realize that it is the aliens that control the political parties.
Okay. Did you have any close family at the time of your death?
I had a sister who was living, and she has children still living. And so this is something I wished to do to protect them.
I understand. What did they think happened to you?
They thought I was killed accidentally. This is the story that they were told. And they did not understand that there was this level of a deep issue happening, but they had suspicions.
Okay, I understand.
And that was intuitive. It was more their inner feeling. There was more going on, and they were being told lies.
Okay.
But they themselves were afraid. And when one is against the entire government, and especially in the inner circle, even as a family member of one sworn to secrecy, there is an extremely intimidating energy that keeps most people quiet because they wish to protect their loved ones from harm as well as themselves.
Okay. So in an effort to preserve your anonymity, I'm assuming that you probably would not want to divulge the date of your death, or can you divulge the date of your death, or the approximate date of your death?
Again, I do not wish to give too many verifiable facts along those lines. And this you may encounter as well with the many others you will be encountering and speaking with. You must understand that we do not care about law enforcement. And most such fact-finding initiatives have that type of goal in mind, or certainly have in mind a verification. And this is quite understandable as well. But there are two issues here. One is that there are karmic consequences for every action and non-action. We in the light do not wish to see anyone jailed. So to do something directly to cause someone's incarceration begins a very large karmic debt that will build over time with the ramifications from all that ensues. So this is the first dilemma in not drawing into...
Okay, I understand that.
Human hatred and punishment-minded forces that would go on a witch hunt and punish and destroy those who may have been more guilty than others.
Okay.
So that is not part of our agenda here. We wish to bring love only.
Okay.
The other issue is that whenever there is a question asked out of skepticism, that there may not be truth behind the words that come forth. The being in the light is in a dilemma in having to follow the true intention of the person they interact with. So if that person has doubts about the validity or truth of the communication, the divine realm cannot prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, because that would exceed the authority they have in needing to follow the intention of the questioner. So this seems like a nice, slick way to escape critical inquiry, but we guarantee you that this is quite true and is quite certain, and your channeler can attest to this as well from a number of experience he has had in wanting to satisfy his own skepticism and hitting this wall, but would find that when coming back from another angle without the doubt in his mind or heart, the information he sought in a prior setting might come forward incidentally as part of a new inquiry
Okay.
with no restriction.
Okay,
So
I understand. Okay, thank you. So do you know if any of the information that you wanted to get to Eisenhower was ever received by him? And do you feel the fact that he did not get it from you created problems for him?
As it turned out, the conspiracy did not unfold. It was thwarted, the conspiracy to destroy him. And the reason was that the light stepped in once again, and this does happen from time to time when there is a critical juncture. There were several times in your recent history where things could have entirely ended in tragedy, and this was brewing at that point. And so the light was able to engineer a quieting of the energies and a misdirection of the alien force. So the conspiracy was aborted. And this was the point at which I received my awareness and was wanting to take the steps to warn him. I did talk to a few others, and that in fact led to the undoing of this conspiracy by those who had enough neutrality to step in and take action. And so I did accomplish my mission, although I did not survive physically, and the story never came forward in its entirety. That is of no concern to me. The important message here is that the President Eisenhower you knew was on the side of light and was given extra protection as a result. And this is the reason that the United States prevailed in World War II as the victor. It was being on the side of the light and receiving help from the light. So in the end, I accomplished my mission.
Okay. Were you ever abducted or contacted by any extraterrestrial beings? And if so, how did they identify themselves and what did they want?
I was abducted, and this was not in my conscious awareness in those days. And this was part of the alien program and was very much the case that they were able to have more influence over me because of the use of physical implants that they inserted directly via my capture and abduction, so that I was under their control for a time to implement this. And that was the purpose. I was enough aware of the possibility of this happening because I had recurring nightmares that I came to fear that this might be part of the alien agenda. And this was also on my mind as I spoke with a few trusted friends. It was only a dim awareness. It was not the conscious recollection of the actual event. It was a subconscious recollection that was imparted to me more in the dream state than as an accessible memory. And of course, that is part of the mind control program as well. Such encounters are heavily suppressed, and in most cases, this is effective in making the memories unreachable.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Philip, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to pass on any final thoughts, And again, we appreciate you joining us and telling us your story.
You are most welcome, and as I said at the outset, I am most keen to be of service here. This is very much in alignment with my soul journey, and especially now as I have a direct involvement at a high level with the unfolding story, and wish to see that the alien agenda is entirely reversed and neutralized, and this will have a mutual benefit. So one need not worry about the consequences to them, as they will only be raised up, and it will serve them to an even greater extent than the human in the resolution of this contest, because their karmic legacy is so gigantic because of all they have done to cause pain and harm. They have a huge uphill climb to rebalance this, and if that can be hastened by the uplifting of human and an act of forgiveness by humanity, this would go a long way to achieve their rescue as well. This is difficult to understand by the average person, to forgive one's enemies even under such grievous insult and injury as humanity has experienced. But this, nonetheless, is what will happen down the line eventually. And this will also hasten the human progress to add love to the effort in all ways, at all levels, to not do the exploration and investigation and sharing of information out of fear or hatred towards a perceived enemy, but rather to help all return to the connection to Creator and to live in a spiritual way.
Okay, thank you, Phillip. So with that, we're going to let Karl come back, and we'll take another break.
Yeah, that was interesting. I had no idea that, but it confirms that conspiracy against Eisenhower that he talked about himself. They were gonna kill him. I mean, that's how I heard it and felt it.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to take him out, and I can well imagine that. I mean, considering who he was, if he was really a light worker.
Yes.
And having been the Allied commander in World War II, he was no slouch. He knew his way around a battlefield and was tough and strong, and could have been quite an adversary.
Yes.